just going to tell you kind of how the cold hard truth here, that when you go get a new loan to buy a property, that the federal government, if you have a really good credit score, and or if you have put down 20% or more, they're basically going to penalize you. Sam, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Good. Hey, you know what? It's been a little while since you and I actually got on a call like this, and I'm really excited about it because I think there's some extremely important information that we need to talk about today. But before we get to that, so how are things been going? I know you've been trying to get some property sold and some property bought. How's that coming along for you?
You know what? I'm hitting some roadblocks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. So I'm in the middle of another exchange, right? You always take that opportunity. It's funny because timing is everything, and you can't predict the market. So at the moment I decided to do the exchange, it was because the numbers worked, meaning I've owned it now for over a year, going on, it'll be 2 years by the mid-June, so just about 2 years. Right now we are at the end of April, and so it had gone up an extra few $100,000 in value, plus I was making good money. But it comes down to what we had talked about in prior videos. It's not about the return on investment as you hold it, it's about the return on equity. If the equity has grown so much so that the return on equity is so much lower, then it's time to trade that equity for something different. And so I found a couple of buyers on my own who wanted, and then it was kind of a gift too. It was a friend of mine's son. And you know what? It was their way of getting into the commercial space. He and a partner came in with a lot of money, and it was the only property that would work for their scenario because they're coming in with 10% HELOCs as a down payment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but this property returns 20%, so this might work for them, right? For me, it was getting into a different type of property. We're in escrow, and wouldn't you know it, within a week, the rates just crept up.
Yeah.
They locked it in at 5.8 or something. A week later, it's at 6.4, then 6.7. Now we're looking at about 7% on the commercial loans. And now we're talking about me getting that 7% on the next deal. So that caused my underwriting to totally change on the prospective properties. And so that's kind of where I'm contending with. But you know what? It's like anything. I took a leap of faith. And I still have my fingers crossed. My buy box is still there. And so we'll see. It's not over until the fat lady sings, right? So
absolutely,
until that time comes, I am getting a little antsy, but I've got faith.
Good. And you know what? I know that we always talk about how, and it is true, that real estate is the way to build real wealth. However, it doesn't come without its trials and tribulations and hard work, just bottom line hard work. I was telling you about some issues I'm having with my property manager in Missouri, and I'm dealing with those. And I'm hoping that I don't have to change her up, but I have to, I will, you know, so we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I mean, it's not a straight up road, you know, it kind of up, down, and so on. So
the exciting part, one of the exciting parts is that I've actually formally formed a management company using the corporation. So now I'm looking into creating uniforms so that the folks that go out to these properties on my behalf can look professional and become standardized. And I'm beginning to build that team. So that's kind of where I'm at. So that's the exciting part. But like anything else, it does cost capital to start that up.
Absolutely. So I just want to let people know that this is our podcast number 52. So we've been moving along, chugging along. You know, we did all of last year. We're going into this year. And it's actually, I feel very happy about it, very confident, feel good, really good about the information we're putting out. So about early last week, I was talking to Sam, or I can't remember if I called you or you called me, but you told me, you're not going to believe what's about to happen. And I go, oh, what's about to happen? And Sam tells me on May 1st, there's going to be a new federal rule that basically says, and we're going to talk about it, I'll tell you kind of how the cold hard truth here, that when you go get a new loan to buy a property, that the federal government, if you have a really good credit score, and or if you have put down 20% or more, they're basically going to penalize you. The federal government will charge you more money than if you did not have a good credit score or were unable to put down, 20%. And when Sam told me that, it didn't even make sense to me. So what have you found out so far about that, Sam? Maybe you can even explain it a little clearer than I.
This stuff, I think you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't make sense. Common sense dictates that you are rewarded by your hard work. So if you've been working hard to keep a clean record, save money, build good credit, and you're out there to go and now invest your hard-earned dollars, you would think you'd be rewarded with the prime interest rates and all that like we're used to, but not so. Yeah, but President Biden or his administration, and this, it almost appeared like it came in the dark of night, right? There was no warning. I didn't hear about this until it was almost too late.
And you're absolutely right, because you heard about it last week, and it's effective May 1st, which is today is the is April 24th. Yeah. So that's just the next Monday, and today is a Monday. So we 1 week from today, this rule will go into effect, and it's put on by an agency called the Federal Housing Finance Agency. And let me read you a little something. This is something that Sam sent me. He sent it to me on my phone. And it says that based on the information that they had heard up to this point, and this is last week, it states experts believe that borrowers with a score of about 680 would pay around $40 more per month on a $400,000 mortgage, which means to me that if it's a higher mortgage, you're probably going to be paying more money. So,
and if it's a higher score, you'll be paying even more.
Right, exactly. And if your score is probably higher, you'll pay even more. So, and they're making it the way the feds are painting it, the way the Biden administration is trying to pawn this off or spin it, is to say, oh, it's just a little bit more money. It's not that big of a deal. And it's going to help everybody. Yeah. But it never is a little bit more money, is it?
No, and I'm going to use a very sensitive word.
Okay.
But to me, this is socialism at its peak, right? Because now everyone else who's working hard is paying for everyone else who's not pulling their weight. That's exactly what's happening, because the other side, the flip side of that coin is, if your credit score is bad, or you don't have money to put down, or you've had a bad time in your life where you did not get the opportunity to get a good job or to build your credit score, you made a lot of mistakes. Let's put it that way. You were financially bad with your decisions. Well, you get an incentive by getting a lower rate. You get priority, right? That's how it's made out to be. And then the folks who do really well, you're paying more fees or tacking on more points, and the government is spinning this in the guise that we as Americans are going to help everybody move forward. But is that fair to the person who's worked their lives? Because here's an example I think we had spoke about earlier, was that what if someone who is barely middle income or just below middle income, and they've worked really hard to clean their credit, to not have a bankruptcy, to save money, 15, 20% down, they're about to buy their first house, and because of the current prices of housing, they can barely afford this $600,000 home with their 20% down. That extra $50 to $100 fee per month can make or break them. This could cut them out of the deal because they're barely making it based on the current numbers now. I mean,
and you know what's ironic about it? They're barely making it because they followed the rules that have been established forever. And that reminds me of when my wife and I bought the house that we currently live in. And back then, of course, this is 1993, but it's all relative. The numbers work no matter what, right? Or don't work. So we had crunched all the numbers. And at the time, my wife was working 3 days a week. Okay. On a part-time basis. We had the kids were little, so we needed her home. And I remember crunching the numbers, and with her working, well, you know, the way it really worked out, she was actually she was working 3 days a week. And we were like right here, you know, like barely breathing. And she tells me, "Oh, honey, I could probably pick up one more day a week, and that will really, you know, it'll take us from here to maybe like here, and we'll be good. You know, we'll be able to buy food and pay the rent and have gasoline and stuff like that, right?" So I said, "Okay, let's go for it." So we went for it, signed the paperwork, and a month later, after we closed, not only did she not get that extra day per pay period, so every 2 weeks she was working, you know, 3 days per week. Not only did she not get that extra day, she lost a day. They cut back her hours. Yeah. And all of a sudden we went from here to like, oh, we can't breathe anymore, you know.
And this is the scenario I see playing out.
Yes.
Right? Because if you think about it, forget the dollar amount for a moment, but let's talk about what this is actually doing in principle. It is incentivizing people to not work hard because they're gonna get this gift. It's incentivizing people to be irresponsible financially because they're going to be rewarded with lower rates and better terms, right?
Right.
And if you really dig into it, when the rubber hits the road, don't you think that the folks who have lower credit scores, who can't financially keep themselves afloat and who can't come up with a down payment, those are the ones who would likely default on the loan that they're about to get at a discount? And now you're asking the folks who have worked hard, established good credit, and probably skimped and saved and kind of like what you said, living right here. You're asking them to fork the bill to cover their faults, because now that extra fee, if people didn't understand, that fee being charged is really the bank's insurance to cover the folks who are riskier and giving those folks, you know, better terms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I keep hearing this stated, and I'm sure you've heard it, the deep state, you know? And I just kind of, I hear those words sometimes and I go, you know what? Because of course, you know, I've been in government work my whole life, or at least like 90% of it. And I know you have too. A big chunk of your life has been in government work. So I don't want to consider myself deep state type of person, right? And yet here you have this Federal Housing Finance Agency out of nowhere, just making it harder and more expensive for your average person. You know, is this going to hurt the you know, people that are making 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, $1 million a year? Maybe yes, maybe no, because it's all relative, of course. You know, and maybe they're going to be paying higher fees, but it really is going to hurt that person that's trying to get from maybe that lower middle income level, and by buying a piece of property or by buying that extra, that first rental or something, they're trying to elevate themselves. They're trying to get themselves out from that lower middle income class to middle income, to maybe even, if they can, you know, make things work out right, even upper income, you know. And what the government here is doing is they're preventing that from happening. They're squashing the ability of people to be able to stay to get out of from one income level up to the next. And I'm really thinking they kind of like this. They kind of like, you know what, we don't need to have more people with more money. You know, we need people to be dependent on us, and we need people to, you know, not worry about being, as you stated, responsible, work hard. So this really upsets me. I mean, it really did upset me when you told me, I was like in shock. And then when
I felt that you didn't believe me when I was telling you this stuff.
But you know what? The Wall Street Journal came out with an article on it, and I've read. I think that I know I've seen a couple of other podcasts from very credible people talking about this, and it's just so frustrating.
Oh yeah, here to another point. This also applies to like refinances. You know,
oh wow,
and that's
okay,
the crazy
now
part.
Now
And
I'm really upset.
this comes right on the heel, if you remember, just recently, within the last month or so, in Los Angeles, if you sell your home and it's sold over 5 million, the government takes another chunk, and if it's sold over 10 million, they take another chunk on top
Yeah,
of that. And that's just mind-blowing. It makes no sense because you're now, like you said, you're punishing those who have worked hard to build this thing that they've got, these assets. And for us, specifically for this podcast, the Real Estate Hedgehog, we talk about investing into rental property. If this is happening, you know what's going to happen is that landlords are going to pass these costs through to the tenants. So it's
oh,
only going to
absolutely.
raise rents. But at the same time, there's only so much you can do, because there's got to be a point where it breaks and you can't pass everything through. So some landlords are going to take a smaller profit. And I think at the end of the day, just like a lot of unspoken ramifications of rent control, it's a lose-lose for a lot of people. It caused a
Yeah.
lot of tension and turmoil in society. And for me, with young children, I think to myself, if this doesn't get repealed or fought in court, or let's say this becomes instilled as it becomes an institution in our society, what does that do, or what will that do to the mentality of our future generations, our future leaders? Are they now going to be disincentivized to work harder?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, they probably are, but even worse, they're going to be disincentivized to buy that next piece of property that's going to help them get out of that level that they're in and up to that next level. That's what's going to happen because, and I get it, interest rates have to go up. Those occur because of market forces. They occur because we're trying to stamp down inflation. But it's just like piling on top of piling
Yeah.
on. And it's just not going to help anything. So I just see this as hurting the economy as a whole, but really more importantly, hurting people, your everyday, ordinary, hardworking person that if you live in California, which is an expensive state, you're making 60, 70,000, 80,000. If you're living in some of the other states, like where I like to invest in, Indiana, Missouri, maybe you're making 40, 50,000 a year, 35, 40,000, and you're able to, put some money together even with that level, because it's relative. California very expensive, Indiana not so much, but now all of a sudden this hits the entire nation.
Yeah.
Across the board. And if we feel it over here, I can imagine how states that maybe aren't as expensive, but also they've got an additional expense being thrown on top of them.
Yeah.
Not good.
Well, I guess it's only fair to put out a quick disclaimer.
Okay.
So between now and May 1st, maybe things might change. Maybe someone will come to you and say, you know what, that was a bad suggestion, as a bad rule, sir. Let's not go forward with this. Let's think this a little more thoroughly. So we don't know yet. I think the details are still coming out. It is very surprising and I guess concerning to a lot of people that this came out so quickly, and it seems kind of secretive the way it came out, and all of a sudden it's just here.
Yeah, I don't know that it came out quickly. My take on this, Sam, is that this has been in the works for a while.
Yeah.
They kept it on the down low, didn't want too many people to hear about it. And again, to me, it's a failure of our media, of our journalists, that this is the type of information that they should be out there picking up and bringing out to the light of day, so that people can be able to respond, not have it come out, like a week and a half before it goes into effect.
Yeah.
That's nutty. That's crazy, so that people don't have. So here's my thought. Here's what I predict it's going to happen. Number one, it's a rule, which means it's not a law. It's not legal. This isn't a law that has been passed by Congress. So that's the only positive out of this whole thing. And the reason I say that is because if you get a new administration, and I don't really believe that this administration will back down on this, anything that they can do to make it more expensive, make it harder on people, take harder money from people's pockets, that's what they do. That's what they love. So it'll
I
have to
think
take,
it garners votes too. That's what they're doing it for.
well, you know what, let me tell you, again, you said something very important that I hadn't thought about, Sam. You said, hey, I'm gonna go buy a piece of property, all of a sudden I've got to pay extra. I already know, because you and I know how to crunch numbers.
Yeah.
So we know what the cost should be. And then all of a sudden we have to throw an additional cost. So you mentioned, yeah, this is probably gonna go down onto the, at some point, it's gonna go down onto the renter. Okay, because you and I are not gonna buy properties, and we've talked about that thing, the buy box, where it doesn't meet certain criteria. And if we have to increase the rents to make it fit the criteria, that's what we do, as long as it's within, you know, market rents and all that. But now we're throwing even more money on top of that. So it's gonna hurt actually the renters more than anyone else, I believe. Yeah, and first time buyers, it's gonna really hurt first time buyers, especially people that are in that middle income group.
Well,
But
I'm hoping that because it's a rule and is not law,
right,
that they can't force banks to follow these rules. Because think about it, how are banks even considering lending to folks that on their scale that are high risk, right? And incentivizing them with lower rates. It doesn't make sense. So
yeah,
I'm presuming or assuming that this is going to apply to federal loans, federal backed loans and stuff versus private loans and bank loans and small community bank loans. So that's what I'm
yeah.
assuming.
Well, I can tell you one thing, it's gonna impact all those Fannie Mae loans,
Yeah.
Fannie Mae and those Freddie Mac loans. So the Fannie Mae loans, I don't know what percent they are, but I know they're a very large percent of the loans that are put out there for home buyers. So because it's a rule, I'm hoping that if a new administration comes in 2024, that they would just squash that and kill it and say, hey, this ain't happening anymore, because it's not fair to anybody. You know, it really isn't. So anyway, so that I hope that our audience doesn't mind that we're ranting and raving about this, because it's just so frustrating to hear about this.
Well, yeah. So let's look at the numbers real quick.
Okay.
Let's just say it's $50. So typically, what we are taught or what we want to follow, the unspoken rule is when you buy a property, a lot of folks follow this guide of making about a minimum of $150 a door in profit after all is said and done.
Right.
Well, that just took a third of it away.
Yeah.
Because of that. So now you have to increase.
Right.
And that can change your numbers quite a bit. If you bought a small duplex somewhere and you were going to make $300 off of this entire duplex, $150 per door in profit per month, well, now you've just lost another $50. Well, that $50 translates to a lot over time, and it can make or break when the big capital expenditures come, because, you know, that's $600 a year.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So anyways, so that's what's kind of happening out there, guys. And I hope that our audience, you know, contact your congressman, contact your senator, if for no other reason, just to let them know that they can't pass something like this, kind of like in the middle of the night, hoping that nobody notices, that, you know, that people are aware, and that next time they want to try something like this, they better think twice about it. So I'm just hoping that we can, you know, again, when it comes to politics, you got to get out there and vote, because politicians make policy, make rules, make laws that are enacted, that usually are implemented by agencies that are part of the administrative state. And you know what? They hurt people when they think they're helping.